Good afternoon, dear students. This is Vishram Singh Meena, Assistant Professor English, working at Government PG College, Karoli. Through online mode, we are studying English literature. The lecture of the day is meant for the students of BA Part First in Kota University. Today, we are going to take one of the famous sonnets written by John Milton. The title of the sonnet is When the Assault Was Intended. The sonnet was written in the Petrarchan style. John Milton has followed the style of writing which was introduced by Petrarch. The poem gives an account of the year in the year of 1648 when Charles I was about to attack the city of London. However, the attack was not done in real, but there was the possibility of attacking the city of London by Charles I. And you know that John Milton was a Puritan, and he did not support the cause of the royalist government. That's why he was in fear that when Charles I will attack the city of London, then his house will be attacked. So he was very sad, and that's why he requests the king to spare his house and himself, because he is a poet, and he gives some examples from the past when the attackers spared the houses of the poets. The poem is divided into two stanzas, an octave and a sestet. As we know that this is a sonnet, so the poem consists of 14 lines. Here, the speaker is the poet himself. He addresses to the captain or colonel or knight who were with arms. They were decorated with arms to attack the city. Who chance on these defenseless doors, misses? He addresses these soldiers of Charles I and says that whoever whoever of these soldiers gets the chance of attacking the defenseless city, here the city has been described defenseless because there was no another king to defend the city. So the poet is in grief, he uh, requests to the soldiers that you should spare the city, because that city was defenseless, and if you are morally sound, then you should not attack the person or the city which is defenseless, which is weaponless, whose chance on these defenseless doors may cease. If our deed of honor did these please, guard them and him within protect from harms. Further, John Milton persuades the soldiers of Charles first, and entreats them that if they are interested, if they are happy to do the work of getting honor or getting respect, then guard they should guard the city people and the poet himself from harms, which will be done by the soldiers by demolishing the city. If our deed of honor did thee please, guard them and him within protect from harms. He can requite thee, for he knows the charms that call fame on such gentle acts as these, and he can spread thy name o'er lands and seas. Now the poet tries to persuade the soldiers of the king. He says that he can make them agree. He will do the things for the king in the future or the time to come. He can requite means he will do the same thing if uh, soldiers spare his city and house, then he will do the work of generosity, because he knows the charms. He is a poet, and with his poetry, which is magical, because with the help of poetry we can make something popular, something famous. So his case with the poet, because a poet is more powerful, because we know that a pen is mightier than a sword. So his case with here, the poet tries to persuade the soldiers of the king that they should spare the house and the city of London, because there lives a great poet, namely John Milton, that call fame on such gentle acts as these. He can he can spread the fame of such gentle actions taken by the soldiers of the uh, royal king Charles first. So he can bring some fame for such soldiers who will spare the house of the poet and the city people, and he is able to spread their fame their fame all over the world. He will not spare lands and seas. The king Charles first will be known all over the world, because it is the work of the poet John Milton who is responsible for this. And if his house is spared, then he will requite by spreading the fame of the king all over the world. Whatever climb the sun's bright circle bombs, whatever climb the sun's bright circle bombs. Now the poet gives an example here, uh, just like the sun, just like the sun spreads his rays everywhere, whatever the climate, whatever the atmosphere is, it doesn't matter, or it doesn't differentiate. So is case with the poet. The poet compares himself to the sun. He says that he will spread the fame of the king like the sun beams, because sun brightens over the world, over the universe. Whatever climb the sun's bright circle warms, lift not thy spear against the muse's bow. The great Emethian conqueror bid despair. Now the poet gives some references from the past incidents of the world history. He requests the soldiers of the king that they should not lift their weapons against the house of the muse, house of the poet, or we can say the city of the poet where he lives, because he was living with his two nephews at Aldergate, London. The great Emethian conqueror with despair. This is the reference of Alexander the Great, who was uh, the king of Emathia. The great Emethian conqueror with despair, who had spared the house of Pindar. The house of Pindar, when there was the attack was being done on the city of great poet Pindar. But he spared the house of the poet just because, or just due to his poetry, and due to his respect for poetry, or his honor for the poets who compose great poetry. The great Emethian conqueror means winner, bid spare the house of Pindorus when temple and towers went to ground. When temples and towers, mosques were being taken to the ground, were being collapsed, were being ruined by the soldiers of Alexander the Great. But the king ordered his soldiers not to bring down the house of the Greek poet Pindar, because he was a poet and he wrote great poetry for literature. The house of Pindars, when temple and towers went to ground, and the repeated air and the repeated air and the repeated air of sad Electra's poet had the power to save the Athenian bulls from ruin bear. And now in the last of the poem, the great poet John Milton says that the poet who wrote Electra, a tragedy, sad means here tragedy, The repeated air of said Electra's poet had the power to save the Athenian bulls from ruin. Who saved Athens? Because he was an Athenian poet or Athenian writer who wrote the great tragedy entitled Electra, and who had the power to save Athens. So is the power of John Milton, because John Milton was a great poet and who could save the city of London, just like the writer of Electra, the writer of Electra, uh, who saved the city of Athens. This is the reference of the year 404 BC, while the previous reference was of the year 303 BC. So these are two references which come in the poem. So this is the sonnet which is written by John Milton, and here in the sonnet the poet intends uh, intends, or we can say poet imagines that there was the attack on the city of London was about to be, but it did not happen in real. So that's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day.